to get started.
There's no agenda here, is there? Oh wait, mine's still showing. Probably outdated there. There we go. Now it's just my connection was flaky. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, let's get started. This is the working group device management meeting from October 29th. Remember, this is a Kubernetes meeting, so please adhere to the code of conduct, be kind to each other. We are in the middle of, well, preparing for code freeze. It's 2 weeks, I think, to go. And we are all busy preparing pull requests and trying to get things done before we head out to KubeCon. Well, the first thing that I've put onto the agenda is our regular project board review. We can go to the PR status and talk a little bit about things that are in progress and things that are not there yet. So John, perhaps if you just click the first link, the PR status, that goes to our pending PRs. I can start with things that are not there anymore, and that is the cell cost limit thing that got merged last week. So
Awesome.
if we were to go back to the full board, it would be underdone, but that's a long list now. So that's one thing down. The next thing is for going to beta. Actually, why do we have remove classic? That's the website. Yep. So that's the website update. That's also almost ready, and I think it just needs an LGDM from Kevin. The resource slice controller, that is something that was a bit limited in 131. If you need a DRA driver with many devices, it wasn't able to split up those devices across multiple slices, and that PR adds that. It's not needed unless you need it. So we could miss beta and not have it, but I think we'll just have it because it's now also almost done. The label thing, I mentioned that we do have the device management label and it populates this board. What I did in this PR is that I also changed the owner's files in Kubernetes so that if you create a PR against one of our directories, quotation mark ours, then it gets automatically added to the board because this label gets added, which may be useful because some people are creating things that we don't see unless they actually tag us. So that was merged
So
today.
why is that still in review? Does it not automatically move over?
And no, it doesn't get merged. It doesn't get moved automatically.
Okay.
Yeah. So this could go to done now that we've talked about it. Yeah, the next one, line item number 3 is the admin access. We decided to make that feature gate controlled, and at the same time, I was trying initially in this pull request to make it so that we kind of preserve backwards compatibility with 131, where the DRA status didn't have a separate admin access field, but it was pointed out during the review. Both John asked about that and Tim yesterday that this is a bit unusual how I've done this, and I've revised the PR today so that it uses the usual pattern that feature-gated fields, whether they are plain strings or complex structs, must be optional. They must be pointers. And Antonio, that's different. Something that I hadn't considered when we talked about that on Slack. In all of the PRs that build on top of DRA core, we have feature gates. So pretty much all of the new fields in those caps must be pointers so that they can be left out and not get serialized if that additional feature is off. And this PR here with admin access does now exactly that as if we were starting anew. And I think that's okay. We can pretty much ignore that this field already existed in 131 in the Alpha API because there also wasn't a DRA driver at that time that actually supported admin access. This is now all coming with a promotion to beta. We know that we know from the test driver that it works, so I'm not too worried, and it remains in alpha anyway. So yeah, we are fine there. We just need to get that PR merged because it kind of blocks other work because it touches the same file. So I hope that I can finalize the API review with Tim soon, get it merged. The scheduling performance number 4 has seen an initial review, and I did a first update. It builds on top of number 3 because it depends on this fix for considering admin access for scheduling purposes. So that is an improvement. It's not actually required, but it's a nice improvement with some good overall performance boosts. So it would be nice to have in 132. Then we have metrics that we promised to add in the CAP for observability. One actually got merged already for the resource claim controller, the one that creates claims for templates. That now has some additional metrics that already got moved to done because it was merged. For Kubelet, we have some latency metrics that are almost ready, just waiting for final approval from, I think it's Derek, who had some comments and might need to be consulted again. Or Sergey, sorry, Sergey. And the sixth item is actually a new feature for network devices, where we want to populate the status, and that seems to be under progress, but it conflicts with the beta promotion. So as discussed in the last meeting, it would be nice if we could get the beta promotion done first as our top priority item, and then do the others if time permits, and hopefully it does. But yeah, what's not on this list is the actual beta promotion. There is a work in progress PR that I have, but it depends on all of these other things to go in first, and I'm a bit lazy with rebasing because I don't know exactly which further changes the admin access thing, for example, will take. Yeah, Antonio?
Yeah, on the beta promotion thing, the only problem is a mechanical problem of rebasing, right?
Yeah, it's a question of what do we put in first? Who needs to resolve merge conflicts?
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. It's about
that's pretty much the only reason why we need to be a little bit careful. And the other thing is review bandwidth with Tim. So if he is available to do more than one thing in parallel, that's fine. But if we need to prioritize, I would like to focus on beta promotion first.
Yeah, I think that the status thing is pretty encapsulated, should not have much problem. Well, thank you.
Yeah, I talked to Tim yesterday, and the status thing he thought was in pretty good shape, but like it's not merged yet, obviously. But so I think that from my point of view, the priority obviously beta, and then the status piece, and then Sergey's piece on pod status and partitionable, and then the prioritized list thing. I was unexpectedly out last week, and maybe out a little bit more over the next few weeks. So I don't think that's going to make this release. Do have a new team member starting today, but getting him up to speed, and I mean, he's done Kubernetes upstream development before, but like there's way too much, I think, for him to do it in a week and a half. So I don't expect that's likely to make it this release.
Yeah. We don't have Kevin because of the time zone changes. He's not able to attend this week because of a conflict. I can report that for the partitionable devices, we did some initial work. I helped a little bit with the API changes, but Kevin has not been able to give it as much attention as it probably would need. So this also likely will skip because there's just not much time left now.
Yeah,
and the API has not been discussed in depth with Tim, so that probably would take a week to get everyone on the same page, because we kind of merged the CAP without Tim finally giving it his approval, so there might be more comments.
It's true, but he's also, we talked about that yesterday too, and since it's an alpha, right? It's not like we can change the API again, like we don't expect.
Okay.
So
so
if we think we can deliver the implementation, and we're open to revising the API again and doing another alpha next thing, I think Tim will probably be okay with it.
Yeah, I know that Kevin is, well, there are significant and hard things missing completely. I could do the mix-in, the sharing of device attributes. That could be done fairly easily, and I know how to do it. But for the actual partitioning and selecting and backtracking, that could be complex, and I personally probably don't have time and shouldn't commit to take over.
Fair. Yeah. Okay.
So I think we now discussed the things that are not on this list, so we can go back to the agenda. I think that's pretty much where we are right now. I also wanted to use the opportunity to advertise a little bit what we are doing at KubeCon, because that's also coming up. For relevant for this group is, of course, any talks related to DRN, and perhaps more important, we do have an in-person working group meeting accepted for the Contributor Summit. So if you are a contributor and you are at KubeCon North America, this is our chance to sit together at a table and do some face-to-face discussions, question and answers, whatever comes to your mind. It's an open-ended working group meeting with no fixed
Can you
topics.
put a time on there? If you don't mind, Patrick.
I
Mhm.
would need to look it up. It's a link to the schedule.
Okay.
So it'll if you look at the meeting doc, all of these are links to well, they should have been deep links, but I think the schedule tool is a little bit dumb. I copied the link and it gave me the link for the top level.
No, it worked.
No,
It's
no,
just-
it did. Okay.
It had something it wanted me to do. Yeah, okay. So this is 11:55 to 12 here.
Yeah, so I didn't find out about this particular thing until after I'd booked my ticket. So I think that may be true of others who may be flying it on Monday.
Yeah, I know.
How
did-
yeah.
Contributors.
How can you plan a KubeCon and not plan for the Contributor Summit?
Because I haven't gone before. I
You
understand.
haven't? Oh,
No,
okay.
no one's invited me. This is new.
All right. So,
Okay, sorry.
traditionally, like the way they always did it was there's the KubeCon for 3 days, and then like Tuesday would be the Contributor Summit, or Monday would be the Contributor Summit, and it would end on Thursday. But there were too many other colos, and so now they have Contributor Summit on Monday, colos on Tuesday, and Wednesday through Friday, which I don't particularly like because it's just like too long for me. But whatever, it is what it is. We got to be. I got to be there. So yeah, it's Monday, but I mean we'll all be there the week, most of us. So Marlo, if you need to chat, we can always set something up that's more ad hoc.
Yeah, I'd love that. I can make the dinner because I come in at 3, so I was planning to try to at least make that. But
yeah. The thing I wanted to bring up also that we may want to discuss there for those who are interested was your topic, Marlo, which was, well, Marlo and I chatted a while back, and she made the point that like without CPU alignment, a lot of our alignment things aren't going to necessarily get the performance we want. So I think that there's it's a challenge to bring in CPU, and we talked about it way back at KubeCon EU in March, but we had to manage scope. So I think that should be an interesting topic for that discussion, but we can always have another one too, Marlo, when you're there.
that would be really helpful. Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't know about the Maintainer Summit timing until after I had booked.
That's fine.
The other 2 sessions are in the main conference, so both are opportunities to get some news if you can't make it to the Contributor Summit, and just
and there'll be one. Yeah, I'll add one other thing on there. I have to look up when it is that we're going to have a booth demo of DRA on GKE. It'll be with alpha clusters because that's all that there is for 131. But and then we're trying to set up something with me, Tim, Patrick, Kevin to have a conversation, but I need to sync with everybody on that. We haven't talked about that yet, Patrick, for a while. So
yeah.
But we'll add those to this agenda, I think, when they're firmed up.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, that's all that I had. I think we can move on to the next topic.
Okay.
Match expressions, perhaps.
Hi, so I'm Geeta. I'm joined by Monik today. We are from the AWS Neuron team. We have our own accelerator, and we are also interested in DRA, of course. So we talked last time about the requirement. We looked at the partitionable device spec. That is definitely of interest, but along with that, we feel we need the match expression to do that. Patrick, you have identified that in the code, and potentially the scoring one also. So we wanted to check with the group. Should we look into that, or is there any better approach that you guys are thinking of?
Well, let's I'd love it if you'd put a KEP together on that for 133, and we can start that discussion. The sooner the better. I think that that's definitely an option. I think the scoring. So for the other KEP that I'm was working on that I'm deferring, we also need scoring, or it's not that useful, right? So this is the sort of like alternative list, because right now without scoring, you kind of you take first available, which isn't, it doesn't make the prioritization. Prioritization is only within a node, not across nodes, and that's not that useful, right? So I don't know if those are two separate KEPs. I don't know if we need a KEP for scoring. I don't know. But for the one that has API stuff, so the match expressions, we probably do need a KEP. So yeah, that would be awesome. There's another idea I've been thinking about, and it's built on top of partitionable devices. And I'll be curious about other people's, and this gets back to the CPU discussion. So with partitionable devices, and I think we talked about this, Geeta, or maybe it was with, I think, I don't remember if it was with Marlo or you, because it was a couple of weeks ago, but we can build a driver that's kind of a meta driver and sits on top of other drivers and shares, like, so you could, this is about allowing the node architect rather than the user. Right now we put it on the user to align with matched attributes or match expressions. It's on the user to align these topologies, and we don't necessarily want our users to have to know that stuff. So partitionable pushes some of that into the driver space, right? You now, like, I can do TPU topologies with partitionable. We can do MIG with partitionable, and we don't have to put that on the user anymore. Whereas now TPU topologies would be with match attributes. But if I want to go across drivers and I want to say, do a, this GPU goes with this NIC, which is why we have the match attributes right now, we put that on the user with, I believe I can build, and I linked an issue where I kind of lay it out, a comment somewhere, there's a link to it, where I can create a meta driver that will actually allow the node author to specify, oh, on this node, this NIC goes with this GPU. But I could even further say this NIC goes with this GPU, goes with this this CPU socket or this package or whatever it is, so that I can create almost a slice of hardware. So this becomes a sort of slice of hardware driver, which allows us to subdivide nodes in optimal ways, but it's no longer on the user to specify that. Is that, I don't know if that applies to your neuron cores, like whether they need alignment between the CPU or not, and all of that.
So currently the requirement we are chasing after is they need to be in an optimal set, which basically translates to them being contiguous. Their
Okay.
indices are published such that the optimal ones will have consecutive index.
Okay.
So whichever combination gets selected, match expression is a little bit suboptimal in the sense that it's gonna evaluate after the selection is made, right? And it's gonna potentially discard that selection and go for the next one because that one didn't fit the bill. So in that sense, it's gonna go through the more combinations. Today, we achieve this through scheduler extension, where we take control of filter, basically. But we wanna move to DRA without scheduler extension, preferably, and have everything through one framework for better
Okay.
visibility.
So one other avenue to think about, I haven't thought about this because what you said just made me think of it. Like what you're talking about is, right, currently our selection algorithm is basically an exhaustive search, and then we just pick the first. Another idea would be algorithmically, like another KEP you could do, and this would have to be alpha, would be a separate algorithm that instead doesn't do an exhaustive depth first search, but instead has some sort of hinting. So like you could have a way in the driver specification. I wouldn't put it on the user. I would try and put it in the driver, in the slice specification somewhere if possible, but where we could hint to the algorithm, oh, if you've made this selection, the next best choice would be that. And that might be more efficient. I don't know if it's worth it, but it's just a thought. So that's another avenue to explore and see if there's anything to it, and then put a KEP together if there is.
Right. One of my colleagues had similar thoughts, like, can we give a hint ahead of time instead of evaluating the combination afterwards? That might speed it up. I'm not sure if he managed to join. He was stuck in traffic. But yeah, we will look into that. And I guess then we should proceed. There isn't any overlap or something somebody else is already investigating that we should join that effort, or we should start this?
So as far as I know, and Patrick, you can chime in here too, like there's nobody looking at match expressions. There's nobody looking at the idea of changing the algorithm to be anything other than what it is, of random block first search or post choice scoring, and then maybe evaluating many and picking the best score. So if you've got some other ideas algorithmically, if you got some other ideas, like, yeah, we'd love to see those.
Okay.
Yeah, but that's correct. Even partitionable devices will just walk through different alternatives and try to find a solution and use the first one. So it won't be much smarter than what we have right now.
Right. So scoring is our current solution to that. And I think that's a good point, Patrick. We could pick a bigger one just because it fits, even though a smaller one would work with partitionable right now. Yeah. So minimum, we need scoring, but maybe we can do better. Abhishek, I think your hand was next.
Yeah, I mean, great discussion. So I'd like to, like understand the word partitionable devices cross vendors, right? I mean, Kevin is not here, but I can give an example of MIG. MIG requires you to pick partitions in pairs, like there is compute and then there is memory, and that pair forms a profile, which is like 1G or 2G or any other profile that it expects. So you cannot like randomly cherry pick any of the cores and any of the memory and say that, hey, this is your slice. So if that's the case, then certainly it's good and bad, because good in the sense your search space maybe reduces, because the previous slice that you just created sort of exhausts a lot of other options that would be on the table. So the search space reduces, but the bad part about it is you lose flexibility. But that's for one vendor. Maybe we should, it's good we are talking about algorithms and making changes, but maybe we should have a document saying, okay, this is my hardware and this is what partitionable means to me, before we even jump on doing some more algorithmic changes, so that we have a generality.
Yeah, so we have it. So that's a great point. Like, we should look at the different hardware options and how they, like, TPU has specific, like for the Neuron, it's contiguous. For TPU, it's a square. So we have connectivity all the way around the square, but not diagonally. So that creates certain subsets of chips that can be chosen. And the current KEP for partitionable allows the driver author to define the valid combinations of those things, and it allows you to do MIG exactly like you said, where like you pick one and it draws down on a set of shared resources so that other ones become unavailable. It's pretty flexible, but it would be useful to see what, if there's other technologies out there that it might not be able to handle and what we need to do for those.
Yeah. So, I mean, if there is interest, I can, start a partitionable document, like mention what it means. Obviously, maybe from AIU perspective also. So, and then we all can, fill in that document before we move on some to concrete implementation.
Well, so have you looked at Kevin's cap on partitionable, or what? He changed the name, right? Composite devices or something. But you look at that cap before you start a document, because it covers
Okay.
this. I don't want you to just do work that's already been done, but like it's I think there's still value in what you're saying, but just make sure that you're not wasting your time.
Okay.
Take a look at what he's got there. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll look at the recent changes. I took a look at it like 3 or 4 weeks ago, but yeah,
Oh,
I'll
okay. Probably pretty similar then. Since cap freeze, it should be the same.
okay.
Yeah. There was one pending PR that didn't get merged, and that was about describing Intel GPUs using that same cap and the data structures there.
Okay.
So I think there is value in doing an overview of hardware using the partitionable devices API and how it fits, how well it fits.
Yes.
But I think that is worthwhile, because I don't think we can put all of that into the cap. Strictly speaking, it shouldn't even have MIG, in my opinion, but making it purely abstract and talking about some hypothetical device makes the cap hard to read. So we picked MIG as the example to explain it, which is, I think, is okay. Yeah, that's where
Okay.
I think definitely more exploration will be needed, and also from people who have other hardware. That's what we need for partitionable devices to move forward. We need to be sure that it actually works for other things. Yeah.
Okay. If we land up starting a new document, we would be happy to contribute to explain how Neuron partitions the devices. So let us know, Abhishek, so we can contribute to that doc if you start one.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I have to do my homework first, and then let's see. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great idea though. Have like all the different vendors list how they'll make use of it, and we'll make sure the API is right. I have to drop off, but I did want to hear what Marla has to say before I go and then.
Okay, just real quick, the concept that we were discussing with has to do with loosely coupled resources. So I'm not sure it has to be a driver, but it does have to be a way to couple resources together, whether it's on a side of the socket, right? So you have NIC to CPU to card, or if you are talking about network attached storage, because that may be a thing that's needed in the future, and to know which nodes it's attached to, etc.
There is a little bit of affordance right now in there for network attached storage and which nodes it's attached to, but we need to work more on that for sure.
Yeah, it's beyond nodes. It's like which resources are loosely coupled is the way I think about it. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to drop off, but you guys are welcome to continue. Thank you all.
Thank you. I think that's it from me. So next steps is we'll start exploring on our side, and we'll reach out to share our thoughts and probably connect with Abhishek to add to that doc.
Yeah. Perhaps we can make that a little bit more general and just collect information about DRA drivers and how we use DRA in general. It doesn't need to be limited to partitionable devices. That's just a thought that I had, because right now we don't have any good overview page that collects all the information about third-party work that is happening in that space. We know, of course, that there is a DRA driver from Intel. There's for GPUs, there's one from NVIDIA, but I don't think we have any conclusive list. I know that for container storage interface guys, they started a web page where they have a large table where vendors can submit an entry for their CSI driver. I think it's way too early to do that for DRA, but a document, a Google Doc that we share among interested people, that may be a good starting point.
Yeah. I also think like website would be like step 2, but step 1 should definitely be a document and see even if it's worth like maintaining that. Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we went through the agenda. That leaves us half an hour to discuss other things, or we can all get some time back. Anything else that people want to bring up? No? Good.
Hey,
Then-
sorry. I did have one use case that I wanted to bring up. So this we in classic DRA we had this immediate and deferred allocation modes, and then as we removed classic DRA, I think we even deprecated that feature. But we have a use case for it in KubeWord where we want to run VMs. And our main use case is that we want resource claims for some stateful devices like FPGA or NVMEs to be allocated and reserved outside a pod's lifecycle.
Okay.
So we have a virtual machine CR that essentially gives us the feature to pause and resume VMs. And then we want some stateful devices to be prepared and reserved as long as our CR is active.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then the life cycle of that allocation is then pretty much tied to the life cycle of your VM and not the pods running on it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see, well, as you noticed, the immediate allocation that is gone now. What I envision for DRA going forward is that we could have other agents in the cluster allocating devices through a protocol that is yet to be defined, and that would be something based on the resource slice status. So we would have to have something in the status saying, I'm agent A, I want to allocate this device for a claim. Is that okay? And then different agents, one of them be obviously being the scheduler, but the other could also be this virtual machine controller. They would need to coordinate through the resource slice whether that device really is still available. It'll make allocation more complex because we now need to coordinate between this resource slice, which is basically just expressing the intent to use a device, and the resource claim, which is finalizing that allocation. We discussed that a little bit in the past, but nothing has ever been written down around that. But I think this would be a worthwhile enhancement, and I think it should fit your use case. It could be supported with some generic Go helper package. So the work that your controller would need to do wouldn't be too hard. The implementation, of course, underneath that is fairly complex because as I said, we need to coordinate changes to multiple different objects. We don't have transactions in Kubernetes, so that will be a bit tricky to cover. But that's one thing. The other thing, and that may be a workaround, I'm not sure, or perhaps even the final solution, you could just create a pause pod. If you know that you need to bring up your virtual machine on a node, I'm not sure how you pick the node, but if you suppose you have picked a node, what you could do is create a pod that doesn't consume any resources on the node. You could say, add a pod selector. Don't set the node name field immediately, because that bypasses the scheduler. But if you set a node selector in this pause pod, the scheduler will see it. It will see that there is a single node that it can run on, and it will do the device allocation for that pod so that it is available on that node. If that fails, obviously the device is no longer available, but then your controller needs to recover and say, okay, well, I thought I could use this node, but it didn't work out. Let me try some other node. This way, we still do the device allocation through the scheduler, so there is no conflict between your own agent and the scheduler. And we don't need any changes in DRA. It should already work right now, because what we basically do is delayed allocation, but we just make sure that this isn't delayed until the virtual machine comes up, but just done immediately because there is a pod.
Right. I guess it would need the sharing feature to be available before we can use it.
Well, sharing of claims is available. So you can just say, okay, I create my claim separately. You manage the life cycle. So you create the claim yourself. You don't use a resource claim template. And then you create a pod referencing that resource claim to get it allocated, to get it prepared on the node by the DRA driver, and then it's on the node, and you can do whatever you want with it when you bring up a virtual machine. So that should already work. The question then is a little bit what and how your virtual machine gets access to that device. If it runs, you mentioned KubeVirt, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Isn't then the KubeVirt instance itself a pod? Or yeah, I think it is, if I
So
remember correctly.
we do
Yeah.
spin up a worker pod.
Yeah.
And
So
then that worker pod will bring up our guest.
Yeah. So that worker pod then could just reference the same claim as the pause pod. But then again, why do you need the pause pod? Why do you need the allocation to happen first? Because it's stateful? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you could do the pause pod and use that to control the life cycle of the allocation, and then bring up machines independently. That should work.
I see. Okay. So right now we can have multiple pods sharing the same resource claim and the same devices underneath.
Yes. Yeah.
And the scheduler can still allow that.
The scheduler allows that, it supports that. What happens is basically that when a claim is not allocated, the scheduler has flexibility with picking a node because it may have different alternatives where it can allocate the device for that pending claim. Once the claim is allocated, it'll just see that it has already allocated on a specific node if it's a node local resource, and then any other pod doesn't have a choice anymore. It has to run on that same node to get access to the same claim.
Right. So I guess then the problem there is that anyone can use that claim and spin up their own pods.
It's namespaced, so no other user in another namespace can use it. But inside the namespace, yes. So if you have multiple users sharing the same namespace, they would all be able, and they are already right now able to reuse any claim in that namespace.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah, that intermediate solution I guess works for now, but yeah, it'll be nice to see a framework supported one.
Yeah, I want to come back to this shared or cooperative, whatever we want to call it, device reservation long term, also because there is another use case when you have multiple schedulers and network attached devices. That also doesn't work well at the moment because each scheduler thinks that it can do the allocation of that network attached device on its own, and it won't consult with other scheduler instances. So you could get conflicts if you have multiple schedulers and network attached devices. It's not a very common thing right now, so it's not a priority to solve it, but that is a known gap.
Okay. So there the conflict is resolved by the kubelet?
Well, we basically end up with an allocation that is invalid. There will be two claims allocated perhaps by two different schedulers referencing the same device, and that's not valid. It is a job of not actually kubelet, but the DRA driver to detect that. It will get two different node prepare resource gRPC calls on the node that reference the same device, and that it needs to track that one device is already prepared for one claim, and then if it gets a call for another claim, that basically indicates that something went wrong and it must fail the second call. But there's no graceful recovery. It's basically an invalid state of a cluster and of the allocations.
Mhm.
Yep, Abhishek?
Yeah, I mean, so in this new world, like, do we have like some information in caps or in document, like how does the kubelet now interact with the DRA for different modes, like sharing, unsharing, or use cases that we are talking about?
This is part of a core DRA design. So there's no separate cap. It basically just talks about you can have ports referencing claims. That's part of a
Mhm.
core API that we are now promoting to beta.
Mhm.
And it explains that there will be a first node prepare resource call for a port when it references the claim and not anymore for other ports. So this is all part of core DRA.
Yeah,
Of
yeah. So
what is now the structured parameters cap.
yeah. So yeah, I understand that so let me rephrase the question. Like, it sounds like we have a pattern that you're describing on how does the kubelet and the DRA interact and what should we do. So maybe a best practices thing, you think there should exist, or we are still in early stages where we don't know what the best practices are.
I think there are comments in our Go doc at least that says the driver must do this or this can happen. It might not be as obvious and explicit as it should be. I think that is where we indeed need to figure out more about how to document this, how to get people to write correct DRA drivers.
Mhm.
That is an area that is worth exploring. We do have the example driver, and it's supposed to implement best practices.
Mhm.
But to be honest, I don't know whether it, for example, does the device sanity check that I just described. It might be worthwhile checking and creating an issue if it doesn't.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I think I'll have a look. At least I'll create an issue and I'll see whether I see it in the code. Most of my work was done on the test driver, and then some other people did the example driver, and I've kind of let Kevin and Ed mostly do that. Or Alexei, I think, was also involved from Intel. Okay.
Thank you.
Perhaps related is the question of how much documentation we need for DRA going forward. I think that definitely is an area where we need feedback from people who try to use it, find the current documentation lacking. I have a task to update the concepts page in the Kubernetes website, for example, for DRA 132, and I've really no idea, or not a good idea, how much details I need to put there. It is user facing, so it currently describes the core concepts that you have claims, that you have shared claims, but it doesn't explain, for example, all the things that you could be doing with cell, because that largely depends on what attributes a driver makes available. So it's kind of hard to write generic documentation of this feature, which is why I haven't put anything about cell there yet. And I'm kind of hoping for feedback from the community on that. And for writing a DRA driver, that is again something that basically I think will evolve over time as we learn more from people who try to get started. Okay, enough on that. Anything else? If not, then thanks for your time and see you. I think actually in 2 weeks we'll be at KubeCon, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll probably not have a meeting then, and instead just all be busy walking around at KubeCon. or talking face to face. So I'm sorry for those who can't attend. It's definitely a worthwhile event, but we'll see. Oh, Kevin, we are about to wrap up. Any last words? No. Then thanks everyone, and
Bye bye.
bye.